One day you stop texting first. You stop calling. You stop checking whether they arrived home safely. You stop carrying conversations that always seemed to depend on your effort. Then something unsettling happens. Nothing. The phone stays silent. The friendship fades. The relationship that once felt so important suddenly reveals an uncomfortable truth. It survived on your energy, not on mutual care. That is a painful discovery. Not because people leave, because you realize how long you stayed where you were never truly held. Many people spend years trying to become unforgettable to those who barely notice their absence. They answer every message, forgive every disappointment, ignore every red flag, not because they enjoy suffering, because they fear one thing more than suffering: being left behind. That fear quietly shapes an entire life. It teaches you to become agreeable instead of honest, available instead of peaceful, needed instead of respected. Little by little, you disappear inside your own kindness. And no one notices. Not even you. The greatest loneliness is not being alone. It is abandoning yourself to avoid losing someone else. Most people never admit this. They tell themselves they are simply loyal, patient, understanding. But loyalty without self-respect slowly becomes self-neglect. Patience without boundaries becomes permission. Understanding everyone except yourself becomes a quiet form of betrayal. Look closely at your exhaustion. Is it really caused by difficult people? Or is it caused by constantly trying to earn a place in lives where you were never asked to fight so hard? That question changes everything. Because the answer is rarely comfortable. The human mind craves certainty. If someone pulls away, it immediately searches for an explanation. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe I said the wrong thing. Maybe I should have tried harder. Notice how quickly your mind puts itself on trial. Almost never the other person. That is what emotional dependence does. It teaches you to become both the prisoner and the judge. The verdict is always the same. I'm the problem, but what if you aren't? What if some people simply love convenience more than connection? What if they enjoyed your effort more than your presence? What if they mistook your endless forgiveness for endless availability? These are difficult questions. Yet freedom begins where comfortable stories end. People rarely leave because you lacked value. More often, they leave because they never learned to value what stayed. An old monk once watched travelers crossing a wooden bridge. Some crossed carefully. Some hurried. Some never looked back. The bridge never chased anyone. It remained steady, doing what it was built to do. Years later, the monk told his students, "Become like the bridge. Support those who cross your path, but never run after those who have already chosen another road. Nature understands this better than we do. Autumn never begs its leaves to remain. The river never argues with the stones that slow its course. Morning never apologizes for replacing the night. Everything moves according to its season. Only human beings cling to what has already begun to leave. Why? Because we confuse holding on with love. We believe that if we care enough, give enough, wait long enough, someone will eventually become the person we imagined. Sometimes they do. Most times they don't. Reality is indifferent to our expectations. Marcus Aurelius understood this. He reminded himself that suffering often begins the moment we demand that life obey our desires instead of accepting its nature. People are free. Free to stay. Free to leave. Free to misunderstand you. Free to choose someone else. Your suffering begins when you believe they should not. Control ends where another person's will begins. Wisdom begins the moment you accept that boundary. Peace enters your life the moment you stop negotiating with reality. This does not mean becoming cold. It does not mean expecting betrayal. It means refusing to build your identity on someone else's decisions. Imagine a tree whose roots grow deep into the earth. Storms bend its branches. Winds strip away its leaves. Entire seasons leave it standing bare. Yet the tree does not panic. Its life has never depended on the leaves. Its strength lies in the roots. Most people live the opposite way. They build their identity in branches. Relationships, approval, attention, recognition. When those things disappear, they believe they have disappeared too. But perhaps you have been protecting the wrong part of yourself. Perhaps your roots have been neglected, while your branches exhausted themselves reaching toward people who never intended to stay. Maybe that is why you feel so tired. Not because life has been unfair. Because you have been carrying relationships that should have been carrying themselves. And here is the truth few people are willing to face. The moment you stop chasing, some people will quietly vanish. Not because you changed. Because your effort was the only thing keeping the connection alive. That realization will break your heart. Then it will rebuild it. Because once you see who remains without being pursued, you will never confuse attention with loyalty again. So before you ask yourself why certain people disappeared, ask something far more important. If you stopped giving everyone your energy tomorrow, who would still choose to walk beside you? Most people think they are searching for love. They are not. They are searching for relief. Relief from feeling invisible. Relief from childhood wounds they never learned to name. Relief from the quiet fear that whispers, if no one chooses me, maybe I was never enough. That fear is powerful. Powerful enough to make intelligent people ignore their instincts. Powerful enough to make kind people tolerate disrespect. Powerful enough to keep someone loyal to people who have never truly been loyal in return. This is where people-pleasing begins. Not in adulthood. Much earlier. Perhaps you grew up believing love had conditions. You were praised when you performed. Accepted when you behaved. Valued when you solved problems for others. So your nervous system learned a dangerous equation. Being useful equals being loved. Years later, you no longer notice it. You apologize when you have done nothing wrong. You explain yourself before anyone asks. You carry emotional burdens that were never yours. You become uncomfortable saying one simple word. No, not because you lack courage. Because somewhere inside you still fears that boundaries will cost you love. The child inside you asks for acceptance. The adult inside you must learn self-respect. There is a hidden addiction that almost no one talks about. It is not an addiction to people. It is an addiction to being needed. Being needed feels meaningful. It makes you believe your place is secure. So you become everyone's listener. Everyone's rescuer. Everyone's emergency contact. Everyone's emotional shelter. Until one day you realize something devastating. The moment your usefulness disappears, so do many of the people who claimed to care. That moment feels cruel. But it is also honest. Because dependency is not connection. It is a transaction disguised as affection. Psychology teaches us that human beings repeat emotional patterns until they become conscious of them. If your childhood taught you to earn love, you will unconsciously seek relationships where love always feels just out of reach. You chase emotionally unavailable people. You overinvest. You overgive. Not because your heart is weak. Because your past has mistaken struggle for intimacy. Healthy love feels unfamiliar. Chaos feels like home. That is why peace initially feels boring to an unhealed mind. It has confused emotional instability with passion for so long that calmness almost feels suspicious. Think about that. How many times have you trusted inconsistency more than consistency? How many times have you waited for someone who repeatedly showed you they were not coming? Not because you lacked evidence. Because hope spoke louder than reality. Hope becomes dangerous when it asks you to ignore the truth standing in front of you. Marcus Aurelius returned to one principle again and again. Control what belongs to you. Release what does not. Simple words. Difficult practice. You cannot control whether someone appreciates your loyalty. You cannot control whether they return your effort. You cannot control whether they choose honesty over convenience. But you can control one thing: whether you continue sacrificing your peace for someone else's indecision. That is where the inner fortress begins. Not outside. Within, the inner fortress is not emotional armor. It is emotional ownership. It is waking each morning knowing your worth does not rise with praise or fall with rejection. It is refusing to place your identity into hands that cannot even carry their own. A peaceful mind stops asking who will stay. It begins asking who deserves access. There is an old Shaolin story about a novice who complained that people constantly disturbed his meditation. The master handed him a clay cup filled to the edge with water. "Carry this through the village," the novice obeyed. When he returned frustrated, the master asked, "Did anyone insult you?" "I don't know." "Did anyone praise you?" "I don't know." "What were you paying attention to?" "The water," the master smiled. When your purpose becomes clear, distractions lose their voice. That story is not about meditation. It is about attention. Your attention is your life. Whatever constantly captures it, slowly shapes it. If your attention is always trapped inside someone else's opinion, your life will belong to them. If it returns to your values, your life returns to you. This is why Stoicism is not emotional suppression. It is disciplined attention. The world constantly invites you into unnecessary battles. Someone ignores your message. Someone misunderstands your intentions. Someone chooses another person over you. Your ego immediately demands a response. Explain yourself. Prove your value. Fight for your place. Wisdom quietly asks a different question. Will this matter a year from now? Most of the time, the answer is no. Yet we surrender weeks of peace over moments that time would have erased anyway. Do not spend years defending yourself against people who have already decided not to understand you. There comes a point when healing asks something uncomfortable of you. Stop trying to be chosen. Choose yourself, not through arrogance, not through isolation, through responsibility. Protect your energy. Respect your boundaries. Honor your values even when they disappoint people who benefited from your lack of them. That is not selfishness. It is maturity. Because every boundary you fail to set today becomes tomorrow's exhaustion. And every ounce of energy you reclaim from people who merely consume it becomes fuel for the life you were meant to build. The question is no longer whether everyone will remain beside you. The question is this: who are you becoming while you keep trying to keep everyone else? There is a sentence that frightens almost everyone. Stop chasing, not because it is difficult to understand, because it demands something most people have never practiced. Trust. Trust that what belongs in your life does not require pursuit. Trust that your value does not increase because someone finally notices it. Trust that peace is worth more than forced connection. At first, detachment feels like loss. The messages become fewer. The room becomes quieter. Some names slowly disappear from your life. For a while, you mistake this silence for failure. It is not. It is exposure. When that chasing ends, every relationship reveals its true foundation. Some collapse immediately. Others become stronger. Neither outcome is your enemy. Both are the truths. When effort stops, truth begins speaking. Many people fear detachment because they mistake it for becoming cold. They imagine someone who no longer loves, no longer cares, no longer trusts. That is not detachment. That is emotional exhaustion wearing a mask. Real detachment is different. It allows love, but it removes possession. It welcomes people, but it never begs them to stay. It gives freely, but it never gives away self-respect. That is why the Stoics never argued against love. They argued against slavery to emotion. There is a difference. Love expands you. Attachment controls you. Love says, "I appreciate your presence." Attachment says, "I cannot survive your absence." One creates freedom. The other creates fear. Fear always demands control. It wants certainty. Promises, reassurance, proof, again and again. But no amount of reassurance can calm a mind that has never learned to stand on its own. No one can give you enough security if you keep abandoning yourself. Psychology explains why. The anxious mind does not seek connection. It seeks relief. Every message, every compliment, every reply, it becomes another temporary dose. For a few moments you feel safe. Then the silence returns. So does the fear. The cycle begins again. That is not love. It is dependency disguised as intimacy. Healing begins the moment you stop asking someone else to quiet a fear that only your own character can calm. Marcus Aurelius understood this long before psychology gave it a name. Your peace cannot depend on what you cannot govern. Other people's choices belong to them. Your response belongs to you. That simple distinction separates freedom from suffering. There is an old Shaolin story about a monk carrying a heavy wooden raft across a mountain. A traveler asked, "Why are you carrying that?" The monk replied, "It helped me cross the river." The traveler smiled. "Then why not leave it beside the river?" The monk stood silent. He slowly lowered the raft onto the ground. Then he bowed. Not to the traveler, to the lesson. Many of us are carrying people the same way. Someone once helped you, loved you, protected you, or perhaps you simply believed they always would. But the river has already been crossed. The season has changed. Still, you carry the weights. Not because they are still part of your journey. Because you fear who you might become without them. The raft was never the problem. Refusing to set it down was. What once saved your life can eventually become the weight that keeps you from living it. Look at a river. It touches every stone. Yet it clings to none. Because its purpose is not to possess. Its purpose is to keep flowing. That is the quiet wisdom of detachment. You can love deeply, care sincerely, show kindness without measure, and still understand that every person has the freedom to walk a different path. Their departure is not proof that your love failed. Sometimes it is simply proof that the journey changed. Nature never apologizes for change. Winter does not ask permission before arriving. The leaves do not argue with autumn. The ocean does not chase the wave that has already reached the shore. Everything moves. Everything transforms. Only the human mind insists that what once was must always remain. That resistance creates suffering. Acceptance creates peace. Acceptance does not say, "I wanted this." It says, "This is what happened," and from that moment, your strength returns. Because energy no longer leaks into arguing with reality. It begins building your future instead. The moment you stop resisting reality, reality stops feeling like your enemy. Something remarkable happens when you truly detach. You become a better friend, a better partner, a better parent. Not because you love less, because you love without fear. You stop controlling. You stop testing. You stop demanding constant reassurance. You give people room to breathe. Ironically, healthy relationships often grow stronger in that space. Not because you held on tighter, because you finally stopped squeezing. Imagine holding a bird. Grip too tightly. You harm it. Leave your hand completely open. It flies away. But offer a steady hand. And it may choose to remain. That is mature love. Not ownership. Joyce, you cannot force loyalty. You cannot negotiate respect. You cannot convince someone to see your worth if they have already chosen convenience over character. But you can do something far more powerful. You can stop offering your peace to those who treat it as ordinary. That is not revenge. It is wisdom. It is self-respect finally becoming stronger than fear. And when self-respect becomes your foundation, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. You no longer measure relationships by how long they last. You measure them by how they shape your character. Some people stay for decades and teach you nothing. Others leave after one season and transform your entire life. The lesson is never found in who remained. It is found in who you became. The question is no longer who left. The question is, what part of myself am I finally ready to stop chasing? One day you stop waiting. Not because life finally became fair. Not because people suddenly became loyal. Because you finally understood something that changes everything. Your peace was never supposed to depend on either. That realization is quiet. No celebration. No dramatic endings. Just an unexpected calm. You notice that someone's delayed reply no longer ruins your evening. Someone else's opinion no longer follows you into bed. A person who walks away no longer takes your confidence with them. The world outside remains exactly the same. The world inside becomes unrecognizable. That is what freedom feels like. Not excitement. Stability. Freedom begins the moment you're emotional, whether no longer depends on other people. 4 years. You believed strength meant enduring everything. Staying, explaining, forgiving endlessly, giving one more chance. Then another, and another. But endurance without wisdom becomes self-punishment. A warrior does not stand in the rain to prove he is strong. He builds shelter before the storm arrives. That is what your inner life requires. Not endless endurance. Preparation. Marcus Aurelius returned to this truth throughout his life. You cannot command another person's mind. You cannot force honesty. You cannot demand gratitude. You cannot negotiate loyalty. But there is one kingdom no one can invade without your permission. Your own mind. Every morning you decide who governs it. Fear or discipline. Resentment or acceptance. Impulse or character. The choice is repeated daily. Not once. Every single day. The strongest fortress is not built from stone. It is built from daily choices. Many people imagine discipline as something harsh, rigid, joyless. It is not. Real discipline is an act of compassion toward your future self. It is choosing today's discomfort over tomorrow's regret. It is protecting your attention before the world steals it. Protecting your peace before chaos enters. Protecting your standards before loneliness lowers them. This is why emotionally strong people often seem quiet. Not because they have less to say. Because they have learned that every reaction has a cost. Attention is expensive. Time is expensive. Energy is expensive. They spend all three carefully. Imagine an archer with only one arrow. He does not fire at every movement in the forest. He waits. He observes. He chooses. Your attention should be just as deliberate. Every unnecessary argument costs clarity. Every pointless comparison costs confidence. Every attempt to convince someone who refuses to understand costs peace. The wise stop paying those prices. Do not waste your best energy proving your worth to those committed to overlooking it. A Shaolin teacher once placed 2 bowls before his students. One was filled with muddy water. The other with clear water. Without saying a word, he stirred the muddy bowl. The water became darker. Then he left it untouched. Minutes passed. The mud settled by itself. Finally he spoke. The water was never healed by force. It became clear because it was left in peace. Your mind works the same way. Every time you chase another answer, another apology, another explanation, you stir the mud. Stillness does what struggle often cannot. It allows truth to settle. That is why solitude becomes sacred. Not because it removes people, because it removes distortion. In silence, you begin hearing your own voice again. Not the voice of criticism, not the voice of fear. Your own, the one buried beneath years of pleasing everyone else. And that voice asks different questions. Not, why don't they choose me, but, am I choosing the life that honors who I am becoming? Everything changes after that. Success is no longer measured by how many people stay. It is measured by how much peace remains when they leave. The mature soul measures wealth in calmness, not in company. As your inner fortress grows stronger, something unexpected happens. You become softer, not weaker. Softer, because strength no longer needs to defend itself. You forgive more easily. Not because people deserve it. Because you refuse to carry what belongs to yesterday. You love more honestly. Not because everyone earns your trust. Because your heart is no longer ruled by fear. You walk away sooner. Not from conflict. From disrespect. You remain patient. But never passive. Kind. But never available at the cost of your dignity. That balance is rare. It is also freedom. You no longer fear being misunderstood. You no longer fear disappointing those who only benefited from your lack of boundaries. You no longer fear standing alone. Because you have discovered something greater than acceptance. Self-respect. And once self-respect takes root, loneliness loses much of its power. Because you finally become someone you enjoy living with. There will still be seasons of loss. There will still be goodbyes. There will still be moments when life asks you to release what you wanted to keep. Accept them, not because they are easy, because resisting them will never make them disappear. Stand like the mountain, flow like the river, grow like the bamboos, strong enough to endure the storm, flexible enough not to break beneath it. That is the quiet path, the stoic path, the path of silent strength. The people meant for your life will never require you to lose yourself to keep them. If this chapter spoke to you, share the lesson that stayed with you most in the comments below. Stand firm. Remain calm. Protect your peace. And if you're ready to keep walking this path of wisdom, discipline, and inner freedom, continue the journey with silent strength. The strongest people are not those who never lose anyone. They are the ones who never lose themselves.